The wind had been whispering warnings since morning, but Ethan and Lily didn't pay much attention. They were newly married, full of excitement, driving into the hills with dreams bigger than the skies spreading above them. The world felt soft and warm, until it didn't. By afternoon, the skies shifted. Clouds gathered like an army marching from every direction, dark and heavy, swallowing the blue one patch at a time. The temperature dipped, and a restless chill crept into the wind. Ethan rolled down the window slightly. Feels like rain. Lily hugged her shawl. Not just rain, something else. I don't know why, but the air feels strange. He laughed gently. Strange or romantic? She didn't smile back. Her eyes stayed outside, fixed on the endless stretch of winding road surrounded by deep forest and disappearing light. Within minutes, the rain didn't just start. It attacked. It came down fast, wild, slashing the windshield in thick sheets. The wipers fought desperately, but the water blurred everything. Trees bent under the growing wind as thunder cracked the sky in violent waves. "Ethan, slow down," Lily whispered. "I am," he assured, though his hands tightened on the steering wheel. The road twisted sharply, becoming narrower, its edges vanishing into fog curling like ghostly fingers. The car shuddered each time the wind slammed against it. Then something happened that froze both of them. The road ahead disappeared. A landslide must have hit earlier. Mud, stones, broken branches blocking the path completely. The rain made the mess look alive, sliding and shifting like something breathing. Ethan stopped the car. "We can't go forward." Lily looked behind them. Going back is worse. "Look at the road. It's turning into a river." She was right. Rainwater poured downhill, flooding the path behind them, swallowing the tracks of their journey. They were trapped. Ethan turned off the engine. Both stared out into the storm, listening to the wind scream like it had a voice of its own. Lily's heartbeat skipped. "Ethan, what do we do now?" He took a slow breath and scanned the forest. "We look for shelter. We can't stay in the car. If the road floods more, the car could slide down." The forest surrounding them was thick, ancient, almost untouched. Tall pine trees towered skyward, their tops swaying dangerously under the storm's fury. Lightning split the sky again, illuminating everything. And that's when Lily saw it. "Ethan, look there." She pointed through the trees. At first, he saw only shadows. Then, with the next flash, the shape became clear. A small wooden cottage, hidden deep between the trees, barely visible under the storm. "No lights," Lily murmured. "Someone must live there," Ethan said. "It's the only chance we have." They grabbed their small bags and rushed out of the car. The storm hit them instantly, rain stinging like sharp needles, wind pushing them sideways. They held hands tightly, struggling toward the forest. Each step sank into mud. Branches cracked and snapped overhead. The sound of the storm was louder inside the forest, echoing between the trees. "Keep walking." Ethan shouted over the roaring wind. Lily slipped, but he caught her. Her hair and clothes were soaked, sticking to her skin. She shivered violently. Another lightning flash struck, close enough to make the ground tremble. Finally, they reached a small cottage, dark, old, and isolated, though it looked worn. The door slightly crooked, moss covering the stone steps. No sign of life. No lights. No sound. "Do you think someone lives here?" Lily asked, breathless. "We can't stand in this storm any longer," Ethan answered. "We'll explain if someone comes." He knocked, but the sound was lost in the wind. He pushed the door gently. It creaked open. Inside it was dim, lit only by a faint gray light slipping through the window gaps. Dust floated in the air. A small fireplace lay cold and unused. A wooden chair sat in the corner. The smell of old timber mixed with something earthy, but it was dry, warmth enough to survive. They entered, shutting the door behind them. The storm outside roared louder, as if angered by their escape. Lily hugged herself, trembling. "Ethan, what if this place belongs to someone dangerous?" He squeezed her hand. "We'll handle it when it happens. Right now, we just survived the storm." They placed their bags on the floor. The silence inside the cottage felt eerie, so quiet it amplified every thunder outside. Minutes passed, Long, heavy minutes. Then suddenly, thump, a heavy footstep outside. Then another, and another. The doorknob turned slowly. Lily clutched Ethan's arm, eyes wide with fear. The door swung open. A tall figure stepped inside, drenched in rain, carrying firewood on his back. His boots were muddy, his coat torn from the forest. His eyes were sharp, tired but kind. He froze when he saw them. They froze too, for a moment. The storm outside felt quieter than the silence inside. Then the man spoke in a calm, deep voice. "Don't be afraid. I'm Mr. Anderson, and this is my hut." Ethan and Lily froze as a tall, drenched figure stepped fully inside the cottage. Every nerve in their body screamed. Yet the man's presence, oddly calm and deliberate, seemed to absorb some of the storm's chaos. Water dripped from his coat and boots, creating small puddles on the worn wooden floor. The wind outside rattled the walls like a creature testing the fragile shelter, but inside, the cottage remained eerily quiet. "Don't be afraid," the man said, his voice deep but steady. "You're safe here. I'm Mr. Anderson. This is my home." Lily's hand found Ethan's, clutching it as if it could tether her courage. "You live here? Alone?" she asked, her voice shaking. He nodded, water dripping from his gray hair onto his coat. "Alone. For a long time. And yet you're not intruding. The storm brought you here." Ethan swallowed hard. We didn't know where else to go. The road, it's blocked. The storm came so fast." Mr. Anderson's eyes softened slightly. "I know. The mountains have a way of deciding who survives their storms." He gestured toward the fireplace. "Sit. Warm yourselves. You're soaked to the bone." The fire was cold and unlit, but he moved swiftly, gathering dry twigs from a dusty corner and arranging them carefully. With practiced hands, he struck a match, and soon the flames flickered, casting warm shadows across the small room. Ethan and Lily settled on a wooden bench, grateful for the fire's comforting glow. The storm outside continued to roar, but for the first time, they felt a fraction safer. "I don't usually have visitors," Mr. Anderson said quietly, leaning against the wall, eyes fixed on the flames, "especially on nights like this." Do you ever get scared living here alone?" Lily asked cautiously. She noticed the scars on his hands, the roughness that only years of wilderness survival could bring. A faint smile tugged at his lips. "Fear comes and goes," he said, "but living alone teaches you patience and observation. You learn to respect the forest, respect the storms, and sometimes you respect yourself." Ethan studied him, curiosity mixing with caution. "We saw the road collapse. The storm came out of nowhere. Do storms like this happen often?" Mr. Anderson shook his head slowly. "Not often, but when they do, they are reminders. Reminders that nature has its own rhythm, its own memory. The hills remember what has happened. The winds carry stories. The rain tells truths some people would rather ignore." Lily's eyes widened. "Stories?" He nodded, eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "Yes, the storm tonight reminds me of the night I lost everything. My wife, she loved these hills. She said the wind spoke differently up here. I never believed her until the mountains took her away." Ethan and Lily exchanged glances. The warmth of the fire contrasted sharply with the cold fear settling in their stomachs. "It was many years ago," Mr. Anderson continued, voice low and heavy with memory. "I was young, careless. We came here for an anniversary trip. Sunlight, laughter, and adventure. But the hills, the mountains have their own rules. And storms, they obey the mountains." A flash of lightning illuminated the room briefly, making his lined face look even more haunted. "We were on a narrow road, much like the one you traveled tonight. Clouds gathered suddenly. Wind bent the trees, as if trying to push us off the path. Rain fell in sheets. I tried to keep the car steady, but a landslide struck. Rocks, mud, and trees, everything was swept aside. My wife," his voice faltered. "She didn't survive." Lily's hands covered her mouth. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. The storm outside seemed to echo Mr. Anderson's sorrow, gusting with a mournful wail. "I survived," he whispered. "Barely. But from that day, I could never return to the life I had. Every street, every laugh, every song reminded me of her. So I came here, to the hills she loved, and I made this cottage my refuge. The storm roared louder, shaking the cottage walls. Mr. Anderson glanced toward the windows, as if listening to the voice of the wind. It's nights like these that the forest reminds you it remembers. And tonight it remembered you. Ethan's heart skipped. Us. You too. Walking into my door. Lost, cold, scared. It brought you here, and for that, I am grateful. Mr. Anderson paused, his gaze returning to the flames. The storm outside has a voice. It speaks to those who listen. And you were wise enough to listen. Lily whispered. Why did it bring us to you? Because storms have wisdom, he said simply. Because the mountains choose when to reveal themselves. And tonight, they wanted to remind you and me that even in the darkest storms, there are lessons, and perhaps even hope. The three sat in silence, the only sound to crackle the fire and the storm's relentless fury. Outside, the wind howled, branches scraped against the roof, and rain hammered the windows. But inside, the cottage felt like a small haven against the wild world outside. After a few minutes, Mr. Anderson stood. You must understand, the night is long, and the forest watches. There are stories to tell, riddles to solve, truths to uncover, if you have the courage to listen. Ethan swallowed hard. Lily leaned slightly against him, unsure whether to feel relief or mounting curiosity. Mr. Anderson looked toward the storm, then back at them. His voice dropped to a quiet, almost conspiratorial tone. If you stay, you will hear things you won't hear anywhere else. And you will understand why I live here, why I am alone, and why the forest chooses its guests carefully. The wind outside screamed like a living being. A branch struck the window with a sharp thunk, making Lily jump. Ethan's hand gripped hers tighter. Prepare yourselves, Mr. Anderson said slowly. Tonight, the forest speaks, and the storm has a story to tell. The flames in the hearth flickered, casting twisted shadows across the walls, as if the storm itself had entered the room. A strange tension settled over them, thick and electric. Ethan looked at Lily, eyes wide. Are we ready for this? She nodded slowly, her fear mingling with curiosity. I think we have no choice. Mr. Anderson's lips curved slightly into a faint, sad smile. Good. Then let the night begin. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, the story had only just begun. The fire crackled, but the warmth did little to chase away the chill that settled over Ethan and Lily. Outside, the storm battered the cottage, branches scraping like fingernails on the wooden roof. Each gust of wind sounded almost like a whisper, an unintelligible voice threading through the trees. Inside, the silence was equally unsettling, punctuated only by the occasional drip of water from Mr. Anderson's coat onto the floor. Ethan and Lily sat on the worn bench, still soaked and tense. Mr. Anderson leaned forward in his chair, elbows on his knees, fingers steepled, eyes deep in thought. You probably noticed something, he said quietly. Something that feels off about this place. Lily nodded slightly, shivering. It's the storm and the forest. It feels alive. Mr. Anderson's eyes narrowed, reflecting the firelight. Alive? Yes, and more. It remembers. It judges. And sometimes it chooses who may enter and who may not leave. Ethan swallowed hard. Choose who may not leave? Mr. Anderson nodded, voice low. There are nights like this when the hills are restless. Storms awaken things that are better left sleeping. And tonight the forest is speaking. A gust of wind rattled the door. Lily flinched. Ethan placed his arm around her, but neither felt entirely safe. Mr. Anderson's gaze remained calm, almost predatory in its stillness. Long ago, he continued, I wasn't meant to be here. I came for love, adventure, foolishness. The forest didn't forgive me then. But I survived, barely, and that survival became a lesson, a warning. He paused, staring into the fire, the flames reflected in his eyes like distant memories flickering across time. Some people, he said slowly, don't understand the weight of being alone in the hills. They don't understand the storms that can come from sky, earth, or from the heart? Lily shivered. Have you been here alone the whole time? Alone in body, yes, he said softly. But the forest, the memories, the echoes of those I've lost, they are never truly absent. The cottage felt smaller, the shadows taller. The storm outside pressed in, heavy and urgent. A loud crack of lightning illuminated the room, and for a brief second, Lily swore she saw something moving in the corner, just beyond the reach of the firelight. Did you see that? She whispered, voice trembling. Mr. Anderson shook his head. Your mind will play tricks during a storm, but the forest, it does have eyes and ears, and it watches strangers. Ethan's pulse quickened. Strangers like us? Yes, Mr. Anderson said, leaning back. People who wander into its depths without respect or knowledge. People who think love and youth can protect them from the elements. People who are unprepared for its judgment. Lily's voice was barely audible. Why are you telling us this? Because, he said, eyes piercing, you need to understand the rules of survival here. If you don't, the forest will teach them to you in its own way. A low groan echoed from the rafters, as if the cottage itself were responding. The storm outside seemed to intensify, pushing rain against the walls with violent insistence. Mr. Anderson stood suddenly, moving to the window. He stared into the dark forest, voice barely above a whisper. I once lost a young man here. Michael, full of curiosity, full of life, ignored warnings, vanished into the woods one night, just like the storm tonight. He never returned. Ethan's heart skipped. What happened to him? Mr. Anderson turned slowly, expression solemn. The forest took him, not out of malice, but as a reminder. It doesn't forgive carelessness. Lily felt her pulse quicken. The forest took him? Yes, Mr. Anderson said. His footprints stopped. His trail disappeared. Only the storm knew where he went. Ethan swallowed. So, you're saying we could disappear too? Mr. Anderson's gaze softened. No, not if you listen. Not if you respect it. Tonight, the storm has a voice. And you are here because the forest wants you to learn its story before it decides your path. The wind howled, rattling the cottage with unnatural fury. A branch struck the roof with a heavy thunk, and for a moment, all three flinched. The fire flickered wildly, casting shadows that seemed to reach out from the corners. Mr. Anderson moved back to his chair, sitting slowly. You must understand something about being alone in these hills. Solitude teaches endurance. Silence teaches observation. And storms teach humility. This forest is my teacher, my companion, my witness, and tonight it has chosen to bring witnesses to me. Lily swallowed. Witnesses meaning us? Yes, he said softly, because even in the darkest storms, there are stories that need to be told, riddles that need to be solved, lessons that need to be learned, and tonight you will hear them. Ethan exchanged a glance with Lily. Both felt the weight of Mr. Anderson's words, the heaviness of the storm pressing down, the forest outside like a silent predator, watching, waiting. The cottage seemed smaller now, a fragile barrier against the night. Mr. Anderson leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers steepled again. But beware. Curiosity without caution can be dangerous. And in this forest, even the most careful traveler can be tested. The storm intensified, rattling the windows and sending shivers down their spines. Shadows danced across the walls like living things. The forest outside seemed alive, breathing, moving, anticipating. Mr. Anderson's gaze softened. Stay close, listen carefully, learn, and respect the night. The forest will guide you if you are ready. Ethan nodded. Lily pressed herself closer to him. Both felt a strange mix of fear, awe, and curiosity, a tension that clung to their very bones. Outside, the wind screamed. The rain hammered against the roof. The trees swayed violently, almost threatening the fragile walls of the cottage. And inside, three souls huddled together, waiting for the night to reveal its secrets. The storm had a voice, and it was beginning to speak. The storm outside had not lessened. Rain pounded the roof and windows with relentless force, and wind twisted the trees violently. their branches scraping against the cottage walls. Inside, the small fire flickered, sending shadows that danced across Mr. Anderson's lined face, making him look at once alive and haunted. Ethan and Lily sat close together, still damp and shivering, their eyes fixed on the old man, who seemed to hold both the warmth of fire and the cold weight of decades of solitude. "You want to know why I live here alone," Mr. Anderson said, his voice soft but commanding, "and why the forest is as much a companion as it is a threat. But first you must hear a story. A warning, in fact, one that the hills do not forget." Lily leaned in instinctively. Ethan's grip on her hand tightened. "It happened long ago," Mr. Anderson continued, "when I was younger and braver, or perhaps more foolish. There was a young man named Michael. Strong, curious, reckless in the way only youth allows. He came here one summer with a group of friends, eager to explore the hills and forests they'd heard about in local tales." Ethan frowned. "What happened to him?" Mr. Anderson exhaled, letting the crackle of the fire punctuate his words. "Michael was warned. I warned him. The forest has rules. The storm is patient, but it is unforgiving. I told him not to go too deep, not to wander alone, not to disrespect these hills." Lily shivered. Did he listen? He shook his head slowly. No. Curiosity drove him farther than he should have gone. On the third night, the clouds gathered, the wind howled, and the forest seemed alive. The storm came fast, faster than anyone expected. His friends decided to pack and leave before nightfall. Michael insisted on one last walk alone, and he vanished. A bolt of lightning illuminated the window, momentarily revealing the shaking trees and the relentless storm beyond. Lily hugged herself tighter. "I joined the search the next morning," Mr. Anderson said, voice dropping lower, almost to a whisper. "The rangers, the villagers. Even I combed the forest floor, every ravine, every cliff, every creek. But Michael was gone. No footprints, no signs of struggle, nothing. Just silence." Ethan's throat went dry. "Completely disappeared?" "Yes," Mr. Anderson said, as if the forest itself swallowed him. "Some say the spirits of the hills claimed him. Others say he became part of the storm. I don't know which is true. All I know is his story is a warning." The fire crackled louder as a gust of wind slammed against the roof. For a heartbeat, the cottage seemed to sway, and Ethan and Lily exchanged frightened glances. "Did anyone ever find him?" Lily whispered. Mr. Anderson shook his head. "Months later, I followed strange footprints after a winter storm, barefoot, leading from the forest toward my door, and then nothing, just ended. The forest had kept its secret. Michael's fate remains unknown, and perhaps it always will. That is the forest's way. It remembers, it judges, and it acts in silence." Ethan swallowed. "So the forest really does choose?" Mr. Anderson nodded. "Yes, it chooses who may enter, who may leave, and who will learn its lessons. And tonight it has chosen you, just as it once chose him. But listen carefully. Listening is the difference between life and disappearance." Lily's eyes were wide with fear. "But why us?" "We didn't do anything." "Because storms like tonight have voices," Mr. Anderson said. "And sometimes the voice brings lessons instead of punishment. The forest brings travelers to understand, to witness, to respect. The storm outside, it speaks to those willing to listen. Tonight, you're those travelers." The wind screamed again, rattling the cottage walls. A large branch struck the roof, and the small fire flickered violently, casting twisted shadows across the room. Ethan felt as if unseen eyes were watching from the darkness beyond the windows. "Be careful of your curiosity," Mr. Anderson warned. "Questions lead to answers, and answers lead to truths. Some truths are best respected with caution. Michael was careless. He ignored warnings, and the forest acted. Tonight, you have the chance to learn without being claimed. But do not assume safety. Storms and forests are patient teachers." Ethan's voice was barely audible. "What do we do now?" Mr. Anderson's gaze softened, revealing a glimmer of something almost human in the depths of his old eyes. "We wait, we listen, and we observe. The storm is not just outside. It is a mirror of the forest's memory, and every gust, every flash, every drop of rain tells a story. Pay attention, learn its riddles, learn its patterns, and you may leave wiser than before. Lily exhaled shakily. I don't know if I'm brave enough. Mr. Anderson smiled faintly. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite fear. You have already begun. The storm raged on. Outside, the rain pounded like the heartbeat of the forest itself. Branches whipped against the cottage walls, and the wind whispered secrets Ethan and Lily could not decipher. Inside, the fire flickered, casting long, shifting shadows. Mr. Anderson leaned back in his chair, eyes locked on the flames. The night is long, and its lessons are many. But the forest always rewards those who respect it, and punishes those who do not. Michael never learned, but perhaps you will. Ethan and Lily sat silently, absorbing the weight of the story. The storm outside seemed to pause for a moment, as if listening to Mr. Anderson's words. Then, with a rush of wind and crash of thunder, it roared back to life, relentless and commanding. The forest had awakened, and so had the lessons it carried. The storm had begun to settle into a rhythm, though its fury outside had not diminished. Rain still hammered the roof, and the windows rattled with each gust of wind. The forest beyond the cottage seemed alive, whispering in tongues that only Mr. Anderson understood. Ethan and Lily sat close to the fire, their clothes still damp, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. Mr. Anderson leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. You've heard the story of Michael, he said softly. Now, you must understand that the forest teaches through riddles. Not all lessons are direct. Some are hidden, waiting for those who are willing to see. Ethan frowned. Riddles? What do you mean? The old man's eyes sparkled in the firelight. I mean the forest itself is a puzzle. Every gust of wind, every fallen branch, every sudden silence tells a story. The storm tonight has brought you here for a reason, to teach you observation, patience, and respect, and to prepare you for what lies beyond this cottage. Lily shivered. What's beyond this cottage? The dark forest, Mr. Anderson said. The forest that swallows the unprepared, the careless, the arrogant, and yet it welcomes those who learn its rules. Tonight, it will test you. Ethan glanced at the window, the rain blurring the view of the trees. How can it test us from here? We're inside. Mr. Anderson smiled faintly, almost sadly. The test is not only outside. It is in your mind, your courage, and your curiosity. To survive, you must see what others cannot, hear what others ignore, and solve what others fear. He stood and moved toward a small table. From a dusty drawer, he pulled out a wooden box. Inside were folded pieces of paper, worn with age. These are riddles I collected over decades. Some were given to me by the forest, or so it seemed. Some were passed down by travelers who never returned. Each riddle teaches a truth. Lily leaned forward, her fear mingled with intrigue. Can we try one? Mr. Anderson nodded. Very well. Listen carefully. This is the first riddle. I speak without a mouth. I hear without ears. I have no body, yet I come alive in the storm. What am I? Ethan thought for a moment. The rain pounded outside, and for some reason, the answer felt connected to the howling wind. Lily's eyes widened. The wind, she guessed, her voice trembling. Mr. Anderson's eyes twinkled. Correct. The wind is the first teacher. It speaks, it listens, and it guides. But only those who pay attention will understand its voice. Another gust of wind rattled the windows, louder this time, almost as if the forest itself applauded Lily's answer. Ethan exhaled, a mixture of relief and tension. Mr. Anderson reached into the box again. The next riddle is a warning. I can move without legs. I can drown without water. I hide in plain sight. And I punish the unprepared. What am I? Ethan frowned. Drown without water? That sounds like fog or mist. Mr. Anderson shook his head slowly. Not quite. Listen to the storm. What makes the path treacherous tonight, yet leaves those who respect it unharmed. Lily's eyes widened as realization dawned. The mud, the landslides, the road. Yes, Mr. Anderson said. the forest itself. The obstacles it creates are lessons. A careless step can be dangerous. Awareness is survival. The fire crackled, and the storm outside roared in agreement. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening, waiting. Ethan and Lily understood instinctively. This was not just a storm. It was a living teacher. Mr. Anderson paused and looked at them. The final riddle for tonight is the hardest. It is not answered by logic alone. You must feel it. He unfolded a paper carefully. I am never seen, yet I shape every path. I am feared, yet I am the friend of those who wait. I have no form, yet I decide who survives. What am I? Ethan and Lily looked at each other, puzzled. Their hearts raced. The storm raged on outside, rain lashing, wind howling, trees bending, as if urging them to answer. The forest decides, Lily whispered. It's the forest itself. Mr. Anderson nodded slowly, a faint smile on his face. Yes, the forest, the storm, the hills. They are alive. They judge those who enter, protect those who respect, and warn those who listen. The final lesson tonight is this. Respect life in all its forms. Even the wind, the mud, the darkness, even a storm that frightens you. Respect them and you may leave. The firelight flickered. A loud branch fell outside, startling Ethan, but he felt strangely different now. Less fear, more understanding. The old man's eyes softened. You have done well tonight. You have listened, you have observed, and you have answered. That is the first step to surviving these hills. Lily exhaled, shaking. I never thought a storm could teach us so much. Mr. Anderson chuckled softly. Few ever realize that storms are not enemies. They are teachers. And tonight, the forest has chosen you as its pupils. Ethan looked at the window. Beyond it, the dark forest swayed under the storm's power, alive, patient, and full of secrets. He understood now that the night was far from over. There were more riddles, more lessons, more dangers, but for the first time, he felt a cautious hope. Mr. Anderson leaned back, watching them. Rest now. The forest will continue its lessons when the night deepens. And when the storm passes, you may carry its wisdom into the light. But remember, what you have learned is only the beginning. The fire crackled, shadows danced, and the storm outside continued its relentless song. Inside the cottage, Ethan and Lily felt a strange mix of fear and wonder. They had survived the first lesson, but the forest had many more to teach. The night was alive, and its riddles had only begun. The storm had finally begun to lose some of its fury, though rain still hissed against the roof, and the wind howled between the trees. Outside, the dark forest seemed to breathe, alive and watchful, as if it were aware of every movement inside the cottage. Ethan and Lily sat near the fire, their clothes still damp, the tension from the earlier riddles making them both alert and uneasy. Mr. Anderson sat opposite them, eyes deep and reflective, the firelight casting shadows across his weathered face. You have listened well to the storm, he said softly, and solved its riddles. But there is more you must understand, lessons that are not found in puzzles, but in life itself. Ethan leaned forward. What kind of lessons? The kind that shape a man or a woman, Mr. Anderson replied, voice low. The kind that teach survival, courage, and humility. The forest has been my teacher, but it is not my only story. You must hear mine. Lily's eyes widened. Your story? Mr. Anderson nodded. Yes, my story, because understanding me helps you understand the forest, and understanding the forest helps you survive it. He leaned back, staring into the fire, letting the crackle fill the silence. I wasn't always a recluse. Once, I had a family, a life in the village down the hill, a wife, a small home, laughter in the evenings. And then, his gaze grew distant, haunted. The mountains called. A trip, much like yours tonight. A storm. And in one terrible instant, everything changed. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. You lost someone? Mr. Anderson's eyes glistened. Yes, my wife, Anna. She loved these hills. She said they were alive. She said they spoke to those who listened. I never believed her until that night. The storm struck. A landslide took our path, and in seconds she was gone. Lily reached for Ethan's hand, trembling. "I'm so sorry." "The pain," Mr. Anderson continued softly, "was unbearable. I could not return to my old life. Every street, every sound, every laugh reminded me of what I had lost. So I came here to the forest she loved, to the hills that had taken her, to make peace with the storm, with the mountains, with myself." He rose and walked to the window, staring into the darkness. Living alone in the forest is not easy. Every day is a struggle. Food, shelter, safety, predators, the cold, storms that strike without warning. The forest tests you constantly, but it also teaches you. You learn to move silently, to observe, to anticipate. You become familiar with the rhythm of life here, and you begin to respect it enough to survive. Ethan's voice was quiet. "So all these years, you've lived here, learning from the forest?" "Yes," Mr. Anderson said. "And the forest teaches in its own way. It gives riddles, it sets trials, it shapes character, and it waits for those who will listen, for those who will learn, for those who will respect it." Lily asked, "But why show us all this? Why not just leave us?" "Because," Mr. Anderson said, turning to them, eyes bright with something like hope, "you are like I was once, young, curious, unaware of the forces at work in these hills. The storm brought you here to learn, to observe, to survive. My story, my life is a guide, and perhaps it will help you avoid mistakes that others have made." The wind outside groaned and rattled the windows. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening to Mr. Anderson's words. "There is one more thing you must know," he said, lowering his voice. "Not all who come here leave unchanged. The forest, the storm, they do not forgive arrogance, carelessness, or disrespect. Michael, the young man I told you about, is proof. He vanished because he did not heed the warnings. The forest judged him." Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. Lily's eyes were wide with fear, but also fascination. "But," Mr. Anderson continued, his expression softening, "you have listened, you have observed, you have respected. That counts for something. The forest will test you, yes, but it also rewards understanding and humility." A moment of silence fell. The storm outside had softened into a steady drizzle, the wind sighing rather than howling. The forest seemed to breathe slowly, peacefully, as if acknowledging Mr. Anderson's words. "Before I let you rest," he said, "I want to leave you with a lesson." He took a small wooden carving from a shelf, a bird delicately crafted from oak. This bird has flown through storms it could not avoid. It has faced wind, rain, and darkness, and yet it survives by knowing the patterns of the sky, the strength of its wings, and the path ahead. You, too, must observe, adapt, and respect the forces around you. Ethan nodded, understanding the metaphor. Lily held the carving gently, feeling the smooth wood, and imagined herself navigating the stormy hills, like the bird, alert, careful, and aware. Mr. Anderson smiled faintly, almost warmly. "You will leave here. You will return to your lives. But remember what the forest has taught you tonight. Respect the storms, respect the unknown, and respect each other. That is the true lesson." The fire crackled softly. The storm had slowed, the forest now whispering instead of shouting. Ethan and Lily sat quietly, absorbing every word, feeling the weight of the night and the gravity of Mr. Anderson's life. Finally, he said, "Rest now. Tomorrow will bring daylight and clarity. The forest will continue its lessons, but for tonight, you have learned enough. Sleep, and prepare yourselves to leave these hills with wisdom, courage, and respect." Ethan and Lily nodded silently, settling closer together. Outside, the forest seemed peaceful, the wind gentle. Yet both understood the night had changed them forever. The storm had passed, but its lessons, like the forest itself, would remain. The first light of dawn crept through the gaps in the wooden walls, casting thin ribbons of gold across the cottage floor. The storm had finally passed, leaving a quiet hush in the hills. The rain-soaked forest glimmered under the morning sun, each leaf heavy with droplets, the earth steaming in the fresh, crisp air. Ethan and Lily sat silently, still absorbing the events of night, the riddles, the tales, the haunting stories, and the lessons that had transformed them. Mr. Anderson stood by the door, watching them with a quiet intensity. His hair, wet from the previous night, now caught the morning light, giving him a surreal, almost ethereal presence. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The cottage seemed alive with the memory of the storm, the fire, and the shadows that had danced along the walls. Finally, Mr. Anderson spoke. "You have listened, you have learned, and you have survived the forest tests. Not all travelers are so fortunate." Lily rose and approached him, her voice soft. "Mr. Anderson, thank you for letting us stay, for sharing your stories, for trusting us with your home." He smiled faintly, the shadows of the past lingering in his eyes. "You are welcome. The forest brought you here. Yes, but it was your courage, your curiosity, and your respect that allowed you to survive." Ethan stepped forward as well. "We'll never forget this night, the storm, the forest, everything. And your lessons, they're life-changing." Mr. Anderson's gaze softened. "Good. That is why I remain here, and why the forest continues to teach. Those who enter these hills carry the memory forward. Not just a storm, but respect, humility, and awareness." The cottage was quiet, filled only with the scent of wet wood, earth, and firewood embers. Outside, the forest stretched endlessly, a mosaic of green and shadow, glistening under the morning light. Ethan and Lily felt both a relief and a twinge of sadness. The forest had been terrifying, magical, and profoundly instructive. It had tested them, and in some ways it had changed them forever. Mr. Anderson gestured toward the door. "It is time for you to leave. The path back to your world is open. But remember this. Do not rush. Do not underestimate the forest, and do not forget the lessons it shared with you." Ethan and Lily gathered their things, still damp but warm now. The fresh smell of rain filled their lungs as they stepped to the door. Outside, the hills sparkled in the sun, the forest alive with bird songs, dripping leaves, and the faint aroma of wet pine. Lily turned back to Mr. Anderson. "Will we ever see you again?" He shook his head slowly. "Perhaps not in person. But if you ever return to these hills, you will feel my presence. And more importantly, you will feel the presence of forest itself. It remembers all who enter with respect. It does not forget, and neither should you." Ethan glanced around the small cottage, every shadow and corner now familiar. "Goodbye, Mr. Anderson. Thank you for everything." Mr. Anderson nodded. "Goodbye, travelers. Carry the wisdom you have earned, and live your lives with courage and awareness. And know that the hills will always watch over those who respect them." They began their descent through the hills, the morning sun lighting their path, reflecting off the mud and stones softened by the storm. The forest seemed calmer now, almost serene, but every gust of wind whispered reminders of the night before, lessons, riddles, and the invisible presence of man who had made peace with solitude, storms, and the forest itself. Ethan looked at Lily, both of them silently acknowledging how profoundly the experience had affected them. The fear, the suspense, the riddles, the stories. They were no longer just memories. They were part of their understanding, part of who they would become. The path gradually widened as they moved away from the thick forest. Sunlight broke through the mist, illuminating the valley below. The river reflected the sky in a mirror of gold and silver, flowing peacefully now, yet still echoing the turmoil of the previous night. "Do you feel different?" Lily asked softly. Ethan nodded. "Yes, stronger, wiser, and grateful, not just for surviving, but for everything we learned, for Mr. Anderson, for the forest, for each other." They walked in silence for a while, letting the weight of the experience settle. Every step away from the cottage felt like leaving a part of themselves behind, but it was a part they carried in their hearts, indelibly etched. Before the forest fully disappeared from view, Ethan paused and looked back. The tall trees swayed gently in the morning breeze, shadows stretching like fingers, and the little cottage nestled among them seemed like a guardian, a silent witness to the lessons they had earned. "Goodbye," Ethan whispered. "Goodbye," Lily echoed. And then, as if answering them, the wind rustled through the leaves, soft and gentle now, carrying a sense of approval and farewell. The forest had tested, taught, and released them. As they reached the lower hills, the road ahead clear and safe, Ethan and Lily turned once more toward the forest. The storm, the night, and the mysterious man they had met would always remain with them. Not as fear, but as wisdom. They descended together, hand in hand, hearts full, ready to face the world anew, forever changed by the lessons of the forest and the kindness of Mr. Anderson. The hills whisper behind them, fading with the morning sun, and for the first time they felt the full weight and beauty of survival, knowledge, and respect. The storm had ended, but its story and theirs would live on forever.